It was a cold, rainy evening. The city lights were shining, and people were walking fast with umbrellas in their hands. Inside a fancy restaurant, everything was warm and quiet. Expensive music played softly. Waiters in black suits moved quickly, serving rich guests. Suddenly, the restaurant door opened. A tall black man entered. His clothes were clean, but not expensive. He looked around the restaurant and walked slowly toward a table. Some people turned to look at him. Some whispered. One woman laughed quietly. Her name was Madame Grace. She was rich, white, and always wanted to be the center of attention. She wore a shiny dress, big diamonds, and a fake smile. When she saw the man walking in, her eyes narrowed. She didn't like it. She spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "Excuse me, waiter. I think someone walked in by mistake. This is not a place for outsiders." The restaurant became silent. People looked down, uncomfortable. The black man heard her words, but said nothing. He simply sat at his table and picked up the menu. Grace wasn't finished. She stood up and walked over to his table. "You know," she said with a smirk, "some people don't belong in places like this. This is a fine dining restaurant, not a fast food shop." The man looked up at her with calm eyes. He didn't get angry. He didn't shout. "Are you the owner?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied, confused. "Are you the manager?" "No, of course not. But I know the owner personally." The man smiled gently. "That's nice. I know him too." Grace frowned. She didn't expect that. She leaned closer and whispered, "Why don't you take your meal to go? People are watching." But before the man could reply, a young waiter came running. "Sir, welcome back," the waiter said with a big smile. "It's been so long since you last visited. The manager is coming to greet you." Now everyone turned to look at the man again, but differently this time. Whispers filled the room. Grace stood frozen. Her face turned pale. The manager arrived quickly. He smiled warmly and shook the man's hand. "We're honored to have you again, sir. Your table is ready. Would you like your usual drink?" "Yes, thank you," the man said politely. Then the manager turned to Grace. "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" Grace tried to smile. "Oh, no. I was just making conversation." The manager nodded but didn't smile back. He looked disappointed. The black man stood up slowly. He turned to Grace and said in a calm, strong voice, "Next time you want to judge someone, ask their story first. You might be surprised who they really are." Then he walked to a private table near the window. The waiter pulled out his chair and placed a silver napkin on his lap. Grace sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were still on the man. There was something about him she couldn't understand. Who was he? Why did the staff treat him like royalty, and what did he mean by, "You might be surprised"? She looked around. People weren't smiling at her anymore. Some looked angry. Some looked ashamed. She felt small. For the first time in years, she felt truly small. As she quietly sipped her drink, memories started to come back. Something about his face. It felt familiar. But from where? She couldn't stop looking at him. Who was this man? And why did she feel like she had just made the biggest mistake of her life? The night after the restaurant incident, Madame Grace couldn't sleep. Her heart was heavy. Her mind kept returning to the man's face. That calm voice. Those powerful eyes. Why did he feel so familiar? She sat by the window, watching the rain fall, and tried to remember. But the more she tried, the more confused. She became, years ago, a small town, dusty roads, broken houses, children without shoes. A young black boy around 10 years old walked to school every day, even when he was hungry. His name was Daniel. He was smart, very smart, but poor. Other kids laughed at his clothes. Some teachers ignored him. And the rich people in town, especially the white ones, didn't want their children near him. But Daniel kept studying. His mother, a kind woman who worked as a cleaner, always said, "One day, your mind will take you where your feet cannot." Every night, Daniel read old books by candlelight. Every morning, he helped his mother clean houses before school. One of the houses belonged to a rich family, a big white mansion on the hill. Daniel would quietly sweep the floor while a little girl played with dolls. Her name was Grace, yes, that Grace. She was spoiled and proud even as a child. She used to say things like, "You're just the cleaner's son. Don't touch my toys." Daniel never replied. He just looked at her, then kept sweeping. But one day, something happened. Young Grace was playing near the garden pond when she slipped. She screamed. She fell into the water. No one was around. The maid had gone to get towels. Her parents were not home. Daniel heard the scream. He dropped his broom and ran. He jumped into the pond without thinking. He pulled Grace out. She was coughing, crying, shaking. Daniel wrapped his thin arms around her and stayed until the maid returned. That evening, Daniel's mother was fired. Grace's parents didn't want a poor boy playing hero. They didn't say thank you. They didn't offer help. They simply said, "We don't need this kind of drama." But Daniel remembered. He remembered the cold pond, the fear in Grace's eyes, the silence afterward. That moment changed him. He decided that one day, people like them would respect people like him. Back to the present. In the restaurant, Grace still didn't know who Daniel really was. She just saw a black man in nice clothes. She didn't recognize the boy who saved her life. But Daniel remembered everything. He remembered the cold water. He remembered the silence. He remembered being invisible. And now they sat in the same restaurant, not as cleaner and princess, but as equals, or maybe more than equals. But Daniel wasn't there for revenge. He didn't hate her. He had grown beyond that. He was there for something else, something bigger. Because what no one knew, not Grace, not the manager, not the waiter, was that Daniel had become something great. And soon, the world would know too. Grace sat in her office the next morning, staring at the city skyline. She had barely slept. Her coffee had gone cold. Her hands were still shaking. Something about that man, Daniel, was haunting her. Then came a knock at the door. A delivery man handed her a small brown envelope. No name, no return address. She opened it slowly. Inside was a photo. Her hands froze. It was a picture of a little girl in a pink dress standing beside a small boy holding a broom. Behind them stood a house she hadn't seen in years, her childhood home. She dropped the photo on her desk. "No, it can't be," she whispered. Suddenly, the past she had tried to bury came rushing back like a storm. Years ago, after Daniel saved her from drowning, Grace changed. But only for a while. She was nicer to him in secret. She would leave. Extra cookies near the cleaning supplies. Sometimes she'd wave at him when no one was watching, but her parents noticed. One night, they told her firmly, "We are not equal to them. You don't mix with people like that." Grace was young. She didn't understand hate yet, but she understood fear. She stayed silent. She let them fire Daniel's mother. She never said thank you. She never told anyone Daniel saved her life. She just forgot, or pretended to. And over time, she became exactly like her parents, cold, proud, and blind to the truth. Until now. Back to the present. Grace looked at the photo again. Why now? Why was Daniel back? What did he want? She tried to call someone, anyone, but her fingers wouldn't stop shaking. So she walked to the mirror and stared at herself. Behind the diamonds, the makeup, the expensive hair, she saw fear, not fear of him, but fear of what she had become. Suddenly, her assistant walked in. "Ma'am, she said. "There's a man requesting a meeting with you. He didn't give his name, but he said you'd know who he is." Grace's heart skipped. "Send him in," she said softly. The door opened. It was Daniel. This time, not in a restaurant, not surrounded by people, just him standing in her office, calm and silent. She stood up slowly. "Why are you here?" she asked, trying to sound confident. Daniel didn't smile. He placed a folder on her table. "Do you remember the boy who pulled you from the water?" Grace's lips parted, but no words came. "I do," he said. "I never forgot." She sat, back down, speechless. He opened the folder. Inside were documents, legal papers, news articles, business deals. Her eyes widened as she realized the truth. Daniel wasn't just successful. He was the new owner of her company's biggest competitor. He had power, influence, respect. And now, she was the one who felt small. But Daniel didn't shout. He didn't insult her. He simply said, "Sometimes life gives you the chance to right a wrong. I'm giving you that chance." He turned to leave. "Wait," she called out. Her voice cracked. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel looked at her, his voice steady. "Because forgiveness is more powerful than hate, but only if you're brave enough to face the truth." Then he walked out, leaving her with the photo and her past. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Daniel Carter becomes major shareholder in Grace Enterprises. Mysterious businessman buys 60% of company shares in silent deal. The media wanted to know, who was he? Why now? But Grace already knew the answer. She sat in the boardroom with her executives. Everyone looked confused, nervous. Some were even angry. "How did this happen?" one man asked. "Who gave him that much control?" another whispered. Grace raised her hand. "It's done. He has the power now." "But why would you let this happen?" someone questioned. Grace stood up slowly. "Because we owe him more than you know." Before anyone could respond, the boardroom door opened. Daniel walked in. He wore a clean gray suit. His expression was calm, but his presence changed the room. Everyone sat up straight. "I'm not here to destroy your company," Daniel said. "I'm here to change it." The board looked confused. Grace looked relieved. Flashback. 1 week earlier, Daniel had sat in another boardroom, this one filled with lawyers and investors. He had spent years working behind the scenes, building, growing, rising. And now, he was ready. Ready to face the woman who once watched him get thrown away like nothing. But this wasn't just about Grace. It was about a promise he made to his mother. To rise so high that the world couldn't ignore him again. And now that moment had come. Back to the present, one of the board members asked, "What changes do you want, Mr. Carter?" Daniel looked at Grace before replying. "First, every cleaner, every guard, every junior worker will now get proper medical benefits. Their children will get free education support. No one in this company will feel invisible." The room went silent. Daniel continued. "Second, I want a new program, mentorship for underprivileged youth. We will open the doors that were once closed on people like me," someone asked. "And if we say no?" Daniel looked at Grace. She spoke before he could. "We say yes." Everyone turned to her. She nodded, her voice firm. "We say yes to everything." Daniel gave a small, respectful nod. Then he said something that shocked the entire room. "Because this company once threw away a young boy without even saying thank you. That boy is me. And I came back, not for revenge, but to make sure no one else is ever thrown away again." The room was still. Some executives looked down, ashamed. Others looked inspired. But one thing was clear. The boy they once ignored was now the man leading them. Later, that night, Grace sat alone in her office, watching Daniel's interview on TV. A reporter asked him, "What made you come back to the company that once rejected you?" Daniel replied with a soft smile, "Sometimes the deepest pain becomes your greatest reason to rise. I came back to turn pain into purpose." Grace turned off the TV. Her eyes were wet. For the first time in years, she felt something she had forgotten long ago, not fear, not shame, but hope. It was a warm afternoon. The press conference room was full. Reporters, cameras, flashing lights. Everyone was waiting. Whispers filled the air. Is he really coming? What will he say? Is it true he owns the company now? Then the door opened. Daniel walked in calmly. He wore a simple black suit. No bodyguards. No loud entrance. Just quiet strength. He walked to the stage and stood behind the mic. The room fell silent. He looked around, not with pride, not with anger, but with peace. He took a breath and spoke. "Many years ago, I was a boy who felt invisible. I was the cleaner's son. I worked hard, but no one saw me. One day I saved a little girl's life, and the next day my mother lost her job." A wave of silence moved through the room. Grace was sitting in the front row, listening, her hands tightly clasped. Daniel continued. "No one said thank you. No one asked my name. That moment stayed with me for years. But instead of carrying hate, I carried purpose. I promised myself, if I ever got power, I would use it to lift others. Not to destroy, not to humiliate, but to build." He paused. The room was frozen. Then he looked directly at Grace and said something no one expected. "I forgive you." Gasps filled the room. Cameras clicked. Reporters sat up straighter. Grace's lips trembled. "I don't forgive the hate. I don't forgive the silence. But I forgive the person. Because when we let go of the past, we make space for a better future." His voice didn't shake. It was calm, steady, full of grace. Then something even more shocking happened. Grace stood up. She walked slowly to the stage. Her eyes were full of tears. She took the mic, her voice trembling. "I was that little girl, I remember now, and I remember being told to forget you. I did. And that was wrong." The cameras clicked faster. No one expected this. "For years I lived in pride. I thought I was better, but I was blind. I'm sorry." She turned to Daniel. "Not just for that day, but for every day after. For every time I stayed silent. For every time I looked away." Daniel didn't say anything. He just nodded once, and in that moment the crowd saw something powerful. Not a man and a woman. Not rich and poor, but two people. Broken, real, standing in truth. The applause came slowly, then louder. Then the whole room stood up. People were crying. Some were hugging. Reporters dropped their notepads. No one expected this kind of ending, but it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. After the press conference, social media exploded. Videos of Daniel forgiving Grace were everywhere. Millions watched it. Some cried, some cheered, some were shocked. But one thing was clear. Something big had changed. At Daniel's apartment, Daniel sat quietly, looking out the window. He had done what few people could do. Forgive the person who once crushed him. But inside, his heart still felt heavy. He picked up an old photo of his mother. Her kind eyes stared back at him. "I did it, Mama," he whispered. "I kept my promise." Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from someone he never expected. Grace. "Can we meet? There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago." Daniel stared at the message for a long moment, then replied, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office." The next morning, Grace arrived on time. No makeup, no diamonds, just a simple dress and nervous hands. Daniel welcomed her in. No cameras, no audience, just truth. She sat down and pulled out a letter, an old, folded piece of paper. "This was written by your mother," she said softly. Daniel's eyes widened. "What?" Grace placed it on the table. Her voice shook. "My father found it the day your mother was fired. She wrote it to you, but he never gave it to you. I only found it after he died." Daniel opened the letter slowly, his mother's handwriting. "My dear Daniel, if you ever read this, it means you kept going. It means you didn't give up. I want you to know, you are not small. You are not weak. You are born for greatness. Don't let their words decide your future. Let your heart lead you. I believe in you, always. Love, Mama." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He held the letter close, like it was the last piece of her he had left. Grace looked down. "I'm sorry I kept it. I should have told you sooner. I was scared. I thought, if I told you the truth, I'd lose everything." Daniel wiped his tears. "But you found the courage now. That matters." Grace looked at him surprised. "You still believe people can change?" He nodded. "Not all people, but the ones who choose to." There was a long silence, a peaceful one. Then Daniel stood up and walked to the window. "I'm not the boy you left behind, and you're not the girl who looked away. We're both something else now." "Stronger," Grace smiled. Not the fake smile, a real one. "Thank you for giving me that chance." Daniel turned and gave a small smile back. "The world is watching. Let's show them what real change looks like." Months passed since the press conference and the heartfelt exchange between Daniel and Grace. Their story had touched many hearts. People talked about forgiveness, change, and the power of a second chance. News programs, online channels, and local gatherings echoed the tale of two souls brought together by pain and hope. A new beginning at the company inside Grace Enterprises. Change was real and visible. Daniel's ideas were slowly transforming the company. The boardroom, once filled with awkward silence and hidden resentments, now buzzed with energy. New policies improved the lives of every employee. Cleaners, security staff, and junior workers received proper benefits and training. A mentorship program was launched to help young people build a brighter future. Employees shared small victories, a cleaner who now enrolled in evening classes, a junior worker who became a team leader, and even a former skeptic who admired the transformation. The company, once known for its rigid hierarchy, had become a beacon of hope and equality. Every week, Daniel and Grace held short gatherings. They invited all workers and shared the journey of change. It was not always easy. The past still haunted them, but the openness to learn and grow became the foundation of the legacy they built. The community responds. Outside the company walls, the community watched closely. Local schools invited Daniel to talk about overcoming obstacles and embracing one's true worth. Community centers organized events focused on diversity and unity. Even old rivals began to learn from the new approach. In one such gathering, a small group of young people sat in a circle on a park bench while Daniel shared his story. His eyes lit up as he described the challenges of being ignored and underestimated. "I was once small, invisible in a world that did not care," he said softly. "But my story taught me that every person deserves a chance. When we forgive, we free ourselves to build something beautiful together." The young listeners nodded. For them, Daniel's words were a reminder that even after deep wounds, hope could blossom.